This is lesson 3.3, Annotation. In this lesson you will learn how to control text, you will learn how to create text styles, you will learn how to use callouts, you will learn how to create keynotes, and you will learn how to control dimensions. Back to Vectorworks. This is lesson 3.3. I'd like you to open up the exercise file that you completed in the last lesson, lesson 3.2. If you weren't successful, you'll find a completed exercises folder and you'll find lesson 3.3 in there. We want to talk about creating text. I'm just going to zoom into this area here because I'd like to create some text. So I'm just going to zoom in. There we are, just zoomed in a little bit, and I want to have a look at my text tool. That's this one here, text. There's a keyboard shortcut for that. If I click, I can start writing text. This is text. There's a return key on my keyboard, and there's an enter key on my keyboard. And I'm using a Macintosh at the moment, which means I've got one return key and one enter key. If you're on a Windows machine, you'll find that both of your keys are labeled enter. But one of the enter keys often has a little icon that goes down with an arrow going to the left. This is called the carriage return or the return key. On a Macintosh it's called return, and on a Windows machine it's labeled as enter. Now the enter key that I'm talking about is the one that's near the letters on your keyboard. When I hit that enter key or that return key, I get a new line of text. Its name actually comes from a typewriter. It's a carriage return that we used to have to create a new line of text on a typewriter. I can now create more text. If I've created enough text and I want to leave this block of text, if I hit the enter key by my numeric keypad, that's labeled enter on both Mac and PC, it gets me out of my block of text and I'm now ready to create something else, create some more text somewhere else. When we have a look at my object info palette, it tells me that I've got text selected, tells me the class and the layer, the size. I can wrap the text or not. I'll just come back to that. I can have something called a text style. I can choose the font. I can choose the size. I can choose whether it's bold or not bold or italics. And all of these things are quite useful. And I can choose horizontal left. This is my alignment left. That's center alignment. Vertical alignment top. And I'm going to go back to my selection tool. So this little cross here is the insertion point of my text. You'll notice that when I change my text from left to center, the little cross moves. Center there and it moves. So this is the insertion point. And this is quite important because when you add extra text to this block, the insertion point will control where it goes. So in this case, when I add more text, this will be fixed and the text will go out to the right. If I change to the center and I add more text, it'll grow both ways, or both sides. Let's just have a look. We can change the font, size and everything there. But we can also do it from the menu bar. Text on the menu bar, we can choose the font, the size, the style, the alignment, but this is the one I want you to use. Format text. I don't really want you to use the other options. This format text opens a dialog box where you can make all of those choices in one place. So I can choose Arial Black, or I can choose Arial. I can choose, I like Arial Narrow. I can make it 12 point, single spacing, not bold, top left. So I can make all the choices that I want about my font. But this is the really cool bit. If you click on the Save button, I'll call it Arial Narrow, 12 point. I can save this as a text style. Now the beauty of the text style is I can reuse this again and again. So let's OK that, and let's change this and we'll make that not a text style like that. Let's choose the font. We'll choose just something random. There we are. Let's have a look at my resource manager. On my resource manager I've got my lesson 3.3 and I have a block of text here. So I'm just going to drag this across so I can grab it. Now watch, as I drag that across, it highlights my block of text. When I release my mouse, it changes that. Now the beauty of the text style is that in my entire document, everything that is using this text style will look the same. So dimensions, text, callouts, all sorts of things, they will all look the same. Because it's a text style, I can right click and I can duplicate that, and this time it's going to be Tecton 24 point. Now that doesn't actually change my text style, so let's go back up here. Now I can't see my font at the moment, so I'm just going to click here and I'm going to choose text styles. That might make it easier because there I can find it more easily. So let's right click and we'll edit that text style. So this should have been Tecton, so T-E-K, Tecton Pro Bold, good. That's the one that I want there. I want this to be 24 point. There it is, Tecton Pro. I want that to be bold, and I want it to be center and center. Why don't we change the color as well, make it a bright blue color. Okay, so now what I should be able to do is to grab this font, or this text style, drag it onto my object, and it fixes my text, or it changes my font and my size. So here's my text style, so I can change it back to Arial Narrow, or I can change it back to Tecton. So this becomes a really quick way of controlling the entire text in your document. So let's go and make that back to Arial 12 point. So let's say, for example, this bracket's made out of steel. So what we'll do is we'll start typing here. So this is number 1, and this is it's created from, it's getting a bit long, so I'm going to hit the return key, and this is mild steel, galv. So I want it galvanized. So that's alright. Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe it would be nice if I put a tab in here. So on my keyboard I've got a tab option, and when I do that it jumps that across the line up with this little bracket here, this little tab control. And you can see I've got several of them. If I put a tab here as well, you'll now notice that my two parts line up. So this is a way of controlling your text really well. Instead of putting spaces in, use tabs to control that. So if I go here and I have number 2, and I use a tab, and I say paint bracket, and so on. I can just put in whatever information I want. So let's go back to that. I need my attributes palette. So window on the menu bar, palettes and attributes. Because what I'd like to do is I'd like to color the back of the text. So at the moment there's no fill in there. I'm going to choose a solid fill, and let's choose a color so you can see it, a light gray. So you'll notice it's the entire block of text has got that grey colour to it. If I choose tight fill, just here, it only highlights the area that's got text, which can be really useful if you're putting text on plans. I can also wrap text. Now when I wrap text I get a little arrow just in this area here. You can just see the little arrow. If I drag that across, or drag it back, and I'm going to make it a little bit wider. There it is. So I can control the wrapping of text if I use my wrap text. I don't have to control it that way. Don't forget I can also use the character returns and do it that way. So I think we've had enough of that text. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have a look at a viewport. So here I'm going to right click, I'm going to enter my annotations. So there are 4 parts to your viewports: annotations, crop, the design layer, and the camera. I want to enter the annotations. I'm going to delete that label so that I can put another one in for you. So I just want to zoom out a little bit. So that's this object here, the drawing label. Let's just have a look at our preferences. Here are my preferences for my drawing label. We want it to be left justified. There's my drawing title, drawing only. I can change the size of the text. Now by changing these, because I clicked on this button just here, this is my preferences. It means that all the objects I put in from now on, or all of the drawing labels I put in from now on, will all be the same style. I want to line up that point there, and double click to place that. Double click because the first click is the insertion point and the second click is the rotation. If you do it 2 clicks slowly, so we touch that point again, we come down to here and we go click, I can rotate it and then I can click. So that's my drawing label. Now I want to put in some dimensions. I'm going to use my constrained linear dimension tool. Click there, and you might notice, this is what we learned in the first lesson, that we can use a single dimension, which is great for this edge here. We can also use a chain dimension, which is great where you want to have quite close control over those little bits there. And finish there. So 2 clicks to finish. What about radial dimensions? I've got a radial dimension tool. I can click on that point there, and I can click and I can place that radial dimension. If I'd rather have that on the outside, I can click on that one. So you'll just notice that that circle highlights all the inside one. Do that again, so click there, bring it round to that point, click there. That's a 40 diameter. What if we want a radial dimension? This is the radial dimension. Let's try that again. So click, I'll come onto this side, it works on this side. Click, 20 mils radius, click there, and click there. It's not quite what I wanted, because here I've got an option, it says leader to the left. Click on that and it'll take that away. Now dimensions can be moved all over the place. So if I click on that R18, you'll see that I can move my dimension. If I click on my R20, I can move that dimension. I can move the text, the 13 text up or down. I can grab hold of that line, I can move it in, I can move it out. I can put that 13 back, I can move it to this side. Lots of options for moving this around. This is a chain dimension, so when I move that up, they all move up. And there's a fine dotted line here. It might be hard for you to see it, but there's a dashed line at the bottom of that dimension. I can grab hold of that and I can lift that up to shorten all my witness lines. So let's exit our viewport. We'll go to another viewport. So I'm going to fit to page area. I want to edit this dimension. I want to edit this viewport, so right click, edit annotations, and I can start dimensioning. So we're going to go back to the first mode, from there to there, from there down to there, and I can zoom in using my zoom tool. And I want to put a angular dimension maybe, so this is my angular dimension. Now you might notice the angular dimension doesn't pick up the edges of my object. I'll have to use this mode here. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines to show how this works. So I've got a line there, and I've got a line here, and I want to put an angular dimension between those two. So I choose my angular dimension tool, choose the first mode, click on that line, and place my dimension. I'll just undo that. If I only have one of those lines, I can use this mode. So click to start, click at that point there, then click on the line, and then you can put your dimension in. So it's my reference line is first, then I click on the line that I want to line up with. So let's delete that line as well. If I want to use the third mode, it's this mode here, I can click on that line there, I can click at the intersection, then I can click along here, and then Vectorworks will give me the angle between those 2 points. The way that went was to click, click, click again on your reference object, and then click to put in your angular dimension. We haven't done unconstrained dimensions. Those are dimensions that are on an angle, where the constrained linear dimension wouldn't give you the dimension on the angle. Center mark tool, just click and it places a center mark. This is really handy for finding the center of a circle. I'll just zoom into that, and there's my center mark there. It just makes a group of lines, and that might make it easy for them to go and put your constrained linear dimension on there. And don't forget, we've got our radial dimension as well that we can put on that object. The last thing I'd like to cover is putting notes on my drawing, so keynotes or callouts. So I could just put text and put a line on it, but I can also use this tool. And this tool allows me to use it in several ways. I quite like this third mode. You can use it in the second mode if you like. So click from there to there, and we type in the text. And I'm just going to copy that because I'm going to be reusing that note again. So that's my mild steel bracket. Now the reason I like this mode here with the 3 points is because I can go click, click, and then I can choose where I want that arrow to go. So that's again a mild steel bracket. OK. Click on the OK button, and that's my mild steel bracket. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that one as well. Because really you should be putting these inside the annotation part of your viewport. So let's right click on here. We're going to edit annotations, and I'm now going to put my call out. So there's my call out. I start at the note and end up on the target, and I use my 3 points. So I'm going to start here, click, and I'm going to go to that point, and it's a mild steel bracket. Now when I get that, I might want to control the horizontal position and make sure it's on the left or on the right. So click there, click there, click there. It's a mild steel bracket. The reason I put them inside my annotations is so if I move my viewport, my labels go with it. Let's go right click here. Let's edit my annotations. Well, this time when I place my call out, I want to see my database controls. So when you use this call out, you can access the libraries. Now I'm just using the default libraries. Here it is here. If you know where a library is, you can click on the choose button and choose one, and I haven't given you one. I do when I do my architect or my landscape course. I actually give you a call out to use. In this case, we'll just use our default, whatever comes up there, and I'm going to add a section. Now my section is going to be steel. Inside my section I can add parts or notes. So let's go steel. I'll add another section and call it timber, because we'll have different brackets. So under steel I want to add a note which is a little bit longer than previous. This is create bracket from, better spell it correctly, from mild steel fully welded and hot dip galv. So it's quite a long note. Now that's going to take up too much room on my page. I'm also going to turn this off, and I'm going to change this to steel bracket. Okay, so now I need to have some bolt holes. So let's have a look at this, and this will be drill 12mm diameter holes for bolts, and I'm going to call that bolt holes. You might be wondering what the description's for. We'll come to that. Let's go OK. So this is my mild steel bracket. Let's update that. OK, and let's save the changes yes. So you can see it's quite a long note. Now one of the things you can do when you get these long notes is you can then say place as keynote. We've got another note here. So this note wants to start in the same line as that one. Click. In fact, I won't start in the same line. Let's start over here, and we'll go line up with that one. Click, and we'll come up to there. Click, and this one will be bolt holes. We go update and OK. So you can see that's a little bit quicker. Now when I place that as a keynote, this is note number 1 and that's note number 2. I'm going to select both of those because I want to line them up. Modify, align, and align distribute leader lines. Now we're going to cover align and distribute in the next exercise, but I wanted to show you the leader lines here because I wanted you to see how you can line these up. I want to align my label points. It's just this one here. I don't care too much about that, but I really want these to line up. I don't want to change number 1. I don't want that shoulder point to move. Okay, click there, and it'll line my 2 label notes up. Very quick. Now what you don't see is what's happened to my notes. And over here, I actually have my notes, and they've been put in this place. So these note numbers here are connected to this note here. If I've got a good place to locate them, let's just move all of those across, because we've got room over here. And that gives me room for these notes. The blue dot here controls the relationship between the number and the start of my note. So I can move that across. This blue dot controls the length of that note. Now the note can be numbers, it can be letters. Notice how the A and B changed here. It can be letters and numbers with a prefix. So I can have a prefix that might say something like C note number or something along those lines. But I quite like this one as well, description. Because now it's got steel bracket bolt holes. And it kind of helps out so that people can see what's going on. So here, these have changed to steel bracket. And if we had a notice before, that would have changed to numbers. These ones here, let's just have a look. So let's go here, edit our annotations. Let's just have a look. This one and this one are not getting the text from the database. So let's double click. We'll show our database controls, and we'll make that steel bracket update and OK. And they'll both be keynotes. So you notice that they're number 1, same as this one. So now if I select this, and I look at my notes, and I call it bracket notes, it's now my bracket notes. I can break the text across columns if I need. I can reuse unused positions, and I can remove gaps if there are any gaps. I can format the title. So this is 20 point. I can format the body text. What did I choose? That one. Andal Mono, 10 point. I can move that back across there. And so I can have quite a lot of power with using these notes. Very, very powerful, I think, using these notes. This is the end of lesson 3.3. In this lesson you learned how to control text, you learned how to control text styles, you learned how to use callouts, you learned how to create keynotes, and you learned how to control dimensions.